My guest today is a true Dutch guitar hero. If you wouldn't know better, you'd say he's raised in the 60s and came to adulthood in the 70s. At 32 years old, he already has a long career behind him. Welcome to this episode, DeWolff singer and guitarist Pablo van der Poel.
Thank you.
Pablo,
Niels Guns.
Yeah, you don't pronounce it like that in Dutch, but it sounds better in English. Hey, long career, I just said.
Yeah.
We were just reading an interview we did. We kind of both forgot about this. I spoke to you a long time ago when you were 19.
Yeah.
And what struck me is that the things you said in the interview, well, we just discussed the same things just now.
Yeah.
In what way have you changed since you were 19?
Well, I think a great deal, especially musically. We just read the interview together.
Yeah.
And it was a very fun read. And it was also I can very clearly remember that time. I just started studying at the Conservatory in Amsterdam. And I was like, I think all the music that I've always listened to that has really touched me, and still the music, most of the music that I listen to is very much based on feel, like gut feel and instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that time, 2011, I was in a period in my life where I was like ashamed of that, or because I was all of a sudden studying at the Conservatory, I felt that I had to, approach music in a more theoretical way, in some way. Not that was the thing that was being promoted at the Conservatory, not at all. But for some reason, I don't know. I actually say in that interview that the music now is more complicated and deeper, whatever.
I'm finished with the pentatonic scale, you literally said. I know all of it by now.
Yeah, so it's funny to read like a 19-year-old saying stuff like that. And I think I've made a complete 180 on a lot of things I'm saying there. Like I've very much went back to really writing music that doesn't come too much from here, but just stuff that like actually like the stuff that we made with DeWolff, and some of the songs we've written together, some of them it's just me, and the most like successful songs that we did were just things that were so simple that I actually at the time of like I wouldn't even say it was written, it just like happened. And then it was like, this must already exist. It's impossible that these three chords with that melody that feels really good doesn't exist already. And I think over the years we've started to trust our own instincts more, and so that's most of the music we make happens like that. Well, back in those days, 2011. It was more like, this is a good idea. How can we make it more complicated?
But that must have been an interesting journey from the gut to the head and back to the gut.
Yeah. I think...
There's a hair in
there
your
it
mouth.
is. This is not a human hair. What is it? It's a piece of...
Cat hair, maybe. There's a cat walking around here.
Probably. It is an interesting journey. I think it has to do with confidence, because when you're 19, or at least when I was 19, I just think I wasn't confident enough to be like, oh, this is how I feel and this is the music I make, deal with it. And I think it's good that I wasn't like that. So because if you're too much like, this is how I do it, fuck everything else. Every music has to have a certain amount of that
complexity, maybe.
Well, of that like vision, but I think it's also good to be open for development, or how do you say it?
Yeah,
evolution.
But the funny thing is that apparently that the thing that you wanted to do you were already there at a young age then. You said like, oh, I made music from the gut from a young age on.
True, but I think I benefited hugely from nurturing that raw thing that was there. So at first it was raw, then it got like nurtured with a lot of information at the conservatory, and then I don't know, I started making music more from the head than from the heart. And then as I grew older, and also as we got, I think it also has to do with, as we got more success, I started to trust my instincts more. And with all that information I had gathered over the years, I was able to go back to that raw instinct, gut feeling.
Can you tell me something about that process? What made you get back there? The success then, the confidence of that came along with the success, or are there other things that helped you with that?
No, it wasn't the success, but it helps. Like if you get the feeling that, oh, what I do when I don't know, when I like let down my guard, maybe like what we were doing live, for example, people really loved that, and live things were very raw, and after a while you get some confidence from that. Okay, if I just do a thing that I feel in that moment, people like that, so then it must be good, or at least have some kind of quality. Whereas, it's very easy. I think as a guitar player, for example, a lot of like the licks that we play, we just play them. It's like, it's not a big deal. We play them like every day or whatever. And but then sometimes it takes someone else to say like, whoa, what you're doing there, that's pretty crazy and amazing, to see like the specialty in your own playing.
Yeah.
For example. But that's only like a small part of it. I think the largest part is like still music, as in the music that I listen to, because when I grew up, like I was listening to Hendrix and Cream, and all this music is, in a way, it's not super complex or anything. And then when I went to the conservatory, you had that thing, the whole conservatory theory, music theory thing, combined with that I discovered the Beatles only then, when I was like 18, 19 years old. And at the same time, not sitting down to really study those Beatles songs. Does that make sense? So
No,
I was studying music theory
and
listening to the Beatles, but for some reason, I still don't know why, and it's strange, but it's also kind of cool, I never sat down and actually studied those Beatles songs, because then I would have discovered, oh, this is also like pretty straightforward stuff. Like some of it is, at least. Like this is just like 1, 4, 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I was just like studying the music theory and at the same time listening to the Beatles. And then there was this strange way I thought that this music was being made. And I was trying to make that kind of music with this information that I was gathering. And that's how like at least 1 or 2 DeWolff records sounded. And then it took discovering the band and Little Feat. That was like music that I came across and that really like touched something inside of me. And then I actually sat down to study it, and I was like, this is just 1, 4, 5 stuff. I had no idea that. And then I started to realize music doesn't have to be complex. And then I could go back to like my younger self.
Go back to the pentatonic scale.
Yeah, be like, yeah, this is the stuff that I love. It doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be authentic. Like authenticity is the most important thing in music, I think. It doesn't have to be far-fetched or complex. It can be complex, but not just for the sake of it being complex. And that's what we were doing with DeWolff. Like we were basically replacing every chord that would be logical in a song or in that chord progression, and replacing it with something that was not logical.
Do you still play live a lot of songs from that era?
No, none. And it also took, and also what happened is this, like this, I think when we did that interview 2011, we just finished our 2nd album, and then the next step was the 3rd album, which was even more complex and crazy. And then came a point where we were going to play that live because we had just released the third album that was called DeWolff 4. We started playing that live, and then we discovered this is very hard to translate live. It's not fun to do it. It's not where our power is. And then we just had like an identity crisis.
You stepped off stage with a migraine.
Yeah, it was like we had just released a new album and we were only playing songs from the old albums. And then, it was weird. Like there was a huge discrepancy between what we were doing in a studio and what we wanted to do live.
But it's still, I can imagine, still valuable to have gone there, right?
For sure. Yeah, because, I also meet musicians and all the songs that they've ever written are just like 1, 6, 4, 5. And I come from a very weird and different place where a lot of the songs I've written are like, you can't even like write it down like that. It's just, it's weird stuff. It's like 1 minor 3. This and that. Oh, this is a 6/4 measure. And then we started like stripping away all the bullshit, all the complex bullshit, and just we started going to the essence of a song more. And we did that for many years. And also the longevity is also what makes us to what we are now. Is just we had so much time in the spotlight basically to develop. And I feel that we've only in my mind, we've only learned to like write real good songs like in the past like 5 years or something. And the other 12 years we were just like trying to reach like a certain level of songwriting.
But did you go through that process as a whole band, or because you have Pablo the singer, guitarist, but you have the whole band with your brother is in there as well?
Yeah.
Was that a combined journey, so to say, from going from raw to complex back to raw again?
Yeah, definitely. It was we were always playing, so we spent a lot of time together. We were best friends, so we went to like parties together, and we were basically always like on the same musical journey. And sometimes it was, and we're all like complete nerds. So even though Robin at that time was also studying, but he wasn't studying at the conservatory, he was studying biomedical engineering. But I could, take him along that crazy music theory ride because he was also very interested in that, and also a super intelligent guy. So he would like pick up all this stuff like way faster actually than I was picking it up. And it was fun, and I'm very glad we had that journey. But I'm also very glad where we are now.
At 32, you went back to the rawness. Your latest album is a proof of that, so to say, right? I mean, but maybe you just mentioned you played with your brother. Maybe going back to the early days of you playing guitar.
Yeah.
So how did that went from the Poel family? Like, I want a guitar. Okay, I want to play drums, or
well, I always my dad used to be in a cover band, and from the time he was 30, so I was 7, and I don't know, when I saw that for the first time and I saw and heard an electric guitar, I was like mesmerized by the look and the sound of it. And I started, whenever I could, I started to like go to rehearsals with him. So whenever I had like a school vacation, I would like go to the rehearsals with him and always be like mesmerized by the guitar. So it was very clear for me that I needed to be playing guitar. And I was a big fan of Metallica. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play Master of Puppets. And but then my parents, like my parents were pretty poor at that time, and they couldn't like afford just buying me guitar, so I had to save up for it myself. So that's why I did, like, for a year, and then finally I could buy.
Wait, Paul, that's a cool thing, because I got one for my birthday. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
But if you crave for it that much, the reward must have been even greater the moment that you were actually able to have bought it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah, it was funny. I was once in this guitar documentary, Gitaarjongens, by Henny Vrienden, and everyone in there was like old, like 50 plus, basically, and every single one of those guitar players got their first guitar like as a present, and I was the only one who had to like save up for it. And with a little help from my grandma, she like sponsored the last like 50 euros or guilders it was back then. I was able to buy my first Squier Telecaster, and my parents were like, "Well, that's all nice and well, but you gotta have music lessons because you can't just like buy that guitar and then just
look at
it." And then they paid for my music lessons, the guitar lessons, but it was weird. Like I was this Metallica kid, 9 years old, and I came to my first guitar lesson, and he just gave me this book, Guitar Starter, which is basically starts with you having a music notation. And I had no clue what it was, why I would have to learn that, and how that would help me in playing Master of Puppets. So there was no incentive for me to learn that.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and I remember very clearly, like my third or fourth guitar lesson, like I didn't study because I didn't like what the teacher was trying to teach me. And the fourth guitar lesson, we opened this book, and I remember looking at, I was supposed to have studied like whatever song in there, and I see those 5 lines. I look at my guitar, there's 6 strings, and I'm like, I don't understand it, and I started crying. So that was happening for like 2 years, I think. Until
that's a long time.
I know.
I talked with this. Sorry to interrupt. With Theo van Niel, who was another guest, great player as well. He had the same experience. I did myself as well. By the way, that the first teacher, he can really put you off the instrument, right?
Yeah.
But maybe because you saved up for it, that you
probably helped.
Endured it for 2 years, right?
Yeah, probably helped. But there was like at least like a full year where I hardly like touched the guitar. So I was more like into skateboarding and other stuff. But then I went to what's it called, high school, and then I got new friends that were into music, and then we started making music together, and I discovered Nirvana. And that was a huge thing for me because all of a sudden I could like, a power chord, and with like these 4 power chords I can play this song. And that was a huge like gratification, of course, being able to play a song. And
your brother was already drumming by then?
No, he started when he was 8, so that's when I was 11.
Oh yeah.
So around this time maybe. And so Nirvana, and then I brought that to the guitar lessons, and I have to give credit to my guitar teacher here, because he was like, okay, yeah, I can teach you that. And then we started diving into these Nirvana songs, and then later I discovered Hendrix, and I was able to kind of get a hold of that stuff. And that's how it started. Like first Nirvana, then Hendrix, and through Hendrix I discovered all of this, like all of his contemporaries, so Eric Clapton, Cream, The Doors, Pink Floyd, and that's how I got into old music.
So by then your brother started drumming. That must have been a gift as well in your life, that you had a brother who's playing decent drums, right?
Yeah, true, because from when I was 11 I started my first band, and then at that time my brother was just like my little baby brother who was studying the snare drum, but gradually he turned into like a really good drummer, and by the time I was 15, something like that, he was like, I preferred playing with him above playing with the drummer in my band. So we were jamming all the time, me and my brother, and we had like 2 bedrooms like adjacent to each other, and then I would put my amp in my bedroom, his drum kit was in his bedroom, and I would step out into the hallway with my guitar, and so I could see him, and then we would jam like that. And I always had this desire to start a band with him. And then my parents at that time, bless their hearts, because my brother was drumming and I was playing guitar, and we just had like our house was like in a row with all these other houses. So it was kind of impossible to do this, basically. And my dad was in a cover band. So they decided to dig a cellar under the garden as a rehearsal space. And they did that. And basically my band had kind of disbanded by the time. And so I was jamming with Luca there. And then we invited a friend of ours, Robin, to join us. And just to jam, and that's basically how DeWolff was born.
So you're about...
I was 16.
16, and it took off quite rapidly from then, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because in 2008, we made our first national TV appearance, and that was a huge thing back then. And basically put us on the map like right away. So we started in 2007, and I remember like us getting the call from the television show asking if we could play there like next week or whatever. We were like, oh my god, this is gonna be our breakthrough. And then they called one day before, and they said, "You do have a real Hammond, right?" And we were like, no. I mean, we were kids. We couldn't like afford. We hardly knew what a real Hammond was. And then they said, "Well, you got to have a real Hammond on the television show because our television host loves Hammonds, and otherwise, it's not going to happen."
Really?
So then next day we
on the record. What show was this?
De Wereld Draait Door.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
And so we rented a Hammond for that show.
Oh man, what pressure on these young kids to have rented a Hammond. But maybe in hindsight,
it's fine. Like there's none of this I regret or am like, oh, I wish it would have gone differently. Everything was perfect.
Because now he has one, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely. He rented one, and he had to like play it because like the keyboard he played at our rehearsals was like you could modify it so that these were like super low octave bass notes, and this sounded like a Hammond. But on the real Hammond, all of a sudden there was no low octave. It was just, the lowest it would go was not super low. So we basically played without bass that first television appearance. But
but you were like 16, 17 then.
I was 16, I think. Yeah,
16. That's really young, right?
In 2008. Yeah, 16 or 17.
So,
my brother was 13, 14, something like that.
How did you feel stepping on stage? Because there's one thing of studying your guitar in your room and maybe composing a little bit, jamming, also another thing, right? Opening up for other musicians. But how did you feel like, okay, stepping up as a front man?
In a way, that's like, it feels like my second nature because, from the time I was 11, started my first band, like it was never a matter of rehearsing, and then maybe performing. It was like rehearsing like once or twice. Okay, we got 2 songs now. And then we had this high school evening where everybody could perform, and that was my first show. And that felt so good that it has been like a thing in my life. Has become a thing in my life where like making music for me and being on stage is like basically the same thing.
In what way did you and your skills as a singer help you play the guitar better?
Whoa, that's a good question. I mean, my voice has always been like a huge reason for like, I don't know, insecurity, because I was always the singer, like in my first band and also in DeWolff, because nobody else wanted to do it. And I consider myself a relatively shy person, but I wasn't shy on stage, so that helped. And then
so you're this extrovert shy person then?
I'm an introvert posing as an extrovert.
Yeah, exactly. But that's because you don't come across like that if you just start talking and quite openly. But
no, I but I've groomed myself basically like over the past 17 years, because when you're on stage, people expect something. And also I want to, there's something I want to do on stage that is in a way like not in my nature, but then again, I've spent so many hours on stage that it's become part of my nature, but it's still like.
But still, the discovering your voice, and you say I'm a bit insecure with that, but yeah, is there a line from your singing to the you playing the guitar? Maybe as a songwriter, perhaps?
Definitely, like those three things, being a singer and a guitar player and a songwriter, has really, helped define what I do now, because I'm not, as a guitar player, I'm not one of those guys that sits down to study like endlessly, because I don't like, I love the guitar like insanely much, but I also think that the guitar by itself is not the full truth. Like for me, it's gotta be in a cool song, and that song also has to have vocals. So I kind of like divided my attention between those three things, and then also recording, because I'm a recording engineer as well, and so I don't consider myself like one of those virtuoso guitar players that I like see on my Instagram feed all the time. Like I cannot like sit down. At least that's how I feel. I can't sit down and like entertain you for 30 minutes with just my guitar. That's just not something that I learned to do, because that also never really interested me enough.
Steve Lukather comes to mind. And
yeah.
You toured with Toto, right? And
yeah.
He's obviously very virtuoso player.
He is, yeah.
Also a great songwriter. I read that you first didn't grasp or didn't like actually what he was doing, but you got to appreciate it, right?
Well, I respect it very much. It's so funny. We saw them last week. They were playing at Boss Spot, where we were also playing, and I respect it very much. I had this like I have this very clear sense of the music that I like and the way it sounds, and I think like half of these records that you see behind me are from 1969 specifically. Like that's in my mind the best year for music. Well, exaggerated a little bit, but a lot of them are. And I like that whole aesthetic, like the way things sound and the way music was made back then. And there's obviously a lot of music, especially nowadays, that falls outside of that. And in a way, I have a very strong opinion about that. But in another way, I once saw this video where Steve Vai playing live, and it's just him and a guitar. And I used to say like, I hate Steve Vai, all this like tapping bullshit, blah, blah. And then I saw that video and I watched it till the end. I was like, how can I not respect someone that's so virtuoso, that's so good at what he does, and has so much love for the instrument, and also having fun at that same time? So
that's the beauty of craftsmanship.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I learned, as I grew older, I learned to be less rebellious and respect that more. So when I see also someone like Steve Lukather, I've like infinite respect for him. But then, if you ask me, like, do I like his guitar tone and would I like to sound like that? I'm like, no, but that's fine. That's why I am me and he's him.
Yeah. Okay, but it's interesting that it says something about you that you at least open up. You give it a chance at least, right?
Yeah.
So the younger Pablo wouldn't have given it a chance.
Perhaps. No, that's true. And also like the evolution, like as a songwriter, made me like appreciate like different aspects of making music more. But that also led to me like I don't play like guitar virtuoso music at home. Like when I'm at home, I mostly play like, I don't know, like Sam Cooke or Otis Redding, Ray Charles.
No, you're just playing Sam Cooke, Sam and Dave, right? Back there.
A lot of music that is not about the guitar like at all. And sometimes like for some for some, and this shows in the latest, like in the past couple of years in the DeWolff music, like there's definitely very clear influences of that music in our music, but still, like when we play live, there's a lot of room for improvisation, and improvisation often comes down to like playing solos. And I love doing that. It feels as the ultimate form of expression to be able to do that. But sometimes I'm like, but who do I turn to for inspiration? Because it's not these guys. There's some like Sam Cooke lines that you can very well incorporate into your guitar playing. But then so sometimes I'm just like, I
So who
see
do you
guys
turn to?
like Joe Bonamassa or Jared James Nichols. Like they show up constantly on my Instagram feed, and I hear them play, and I'm like, well, it's not the music that I would listen to at home per se, but the Steve Vai thing, like what they do with their instrument and how well they do it, and how they put like their self into that thing, nowadays can also really inspire me.
So maybe also the notion that there are not really borders, right? With the guitar. I mean, well, there are the strings and the size of it and whatnot, but like the discovery can be infinite, I suppose.
Yeah, and also like in the past, I would very much like be like, oh, I don't like this artist because their records sound like shit. And I might still on a level feel that their records sound like shit, but I think just making music, and it also has to do with these times, like just craftsmanship as you see it in some of those guys is like, it's unsurpassed, but it's also rare these days. Because like craftsmanship is like, has kind of like gone out the window in a way.
Yeah, is it? Because every in my Instagram feed, I see these amazing players the whole time. I'm like, oh my God.
That is also true. But I mean, like music, and the music industry and the music that comes out like on mainstream radio or whatever, just like has nothing to do with what people were doing like before computers entered the music arena.
That's that's an interesting development, because talking about Steve Lukather, he's been back in the days, right, where he was just going into the studio and just playing what was needed on a record for other artists as well. That's also craftsmanship, right? Like just
definitely
have to give a song, be able to give a song what it needs. I have to think about the recording process of your latest album, which was done in a very raw way also, right? With like
the latest record that came out was kind of a reaction on the whole like COVID era where you weren't allowed to like see other people and make music in front of people and stuff like that. And we decided that we wanted to make a studio record where everything that you hear was played live. So if there was going to be a tambourine in a song, that tambourine needed to be played by someone. So this resulted in us having to bring 8 friends, musicians, to the place that we were going to cut this album. That was in France at this amazing studio called Kerwax that's just filled to the brim with 50s and 60s tube gear, like the most insane gear you've ever seen. And so yeah, we did this record all live, recorded to tape, no overdubs, no punch-ins, no nothing, no editing. And
no mistakes.
No, well, there are plenty of mistakes in there. Yeah. When you're playing in a room with 11 people, there's always going to be someone that makes a mistake.
Yeah, but pretty magical as well, right? I can imagine.
Well, that's what making music is. Like, it's magic, but what I mean more is like, in my mind, the core essence of making music is doing it together with other people and playing off each other's musicality and mistakes. Like that's live, right? Every human has his or hers flaws, and I don't believe in perfect music.
That's a cool sentence, because if somebody would say I made perfect music, that'd be horrible. Right?
Yeah, but it's happening now. Like
Yeah.
we have the technology at hand to make everything perfect.
Yeah.
And it not only goes for music, it's for a lot of other things too. But I don't believe it.
Yeah.
In the end, we're all human. We get born and we die, and those years in between are not so different as we think it is from like people 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it is, but it doesn't necessarily. It's not better or worse. It's the human experience.
Yeah. About human experience, I'm gonna take you along to a concert tonight.
Yes, I'm
We're
very
gonna
much
see
looking forward to that.
Tommy Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Because I just spoke with him earlier today, and I thought, oh well, it's half an hour drive from your home. I'm curious to hear what you think of his playing. Have you listened to him actually?
I have seen like videos of him probably on Instagram. Not probably. I know I've seen videos of him, and it's mind blowing stuff.
Let's discuss 14 years later.
Yes.
When we meet next.
So that's a perfect example of someone who's like doing it solo, and taking everything out of the guitar that's in there, and that's what I meant earlier. That's never like the path that I like envision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I could do that, I would be really happy if I would have that amount of talent. But for me, it was always like, that's cool, but I'm not going to spend like all my time in practicing the guitar to be that good, because I also want to sing, and I also want to perform, and I also want to produce and record music. So in the end, unless you're fucking, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix, you have to, make a priority. You have to prioritize certain things. And
I'm curious now, before we wrap this up, have you performed as a solo artist sometimes as well, or not? Just you on stage?
Very rarely. But I don't feel comfortable doing that. That also has to do with the fact that like for 17 years, which is more than half of my life, I've been on stage with other guys doing it together, and a large part of what I do on that stage is based on what other people are playing. So I need that input to
be you,
to be me. Yeah.
Sorry, I just maybe you wanted to say something completely different.
But in a way, like I feel like sometimes on stage you can be like a grander version of yourself, and I need people around me to become that version of myself, and that's when I can be that version of myself. I'm really happy. That makes me happy. And being on my own on stage, man, I would be too nervous for it.
Well, I'm happy you have those people around you, and you're making the cool music that you are making. I say new album. It's been out for a while now, so probably there's a new one already in the making or recorded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's being mastered right now. Yeah, that was a trip. We went to the United States, to Alabama, and we went to 2 studios, Fame and Muscle Shoals Sound Studio.
Oh, wow.
Which are both like legendary studios, where Wilson Pickett, Aretha Franklin, Little Richard even, but also Leon Russell, Willie Nelson, and a bunch of other Boss Gags have recorded.
I just said before we wrap this up, but let's make this a little bit longer. You have this love for the States, right?
Yeah.
Or is it love-hate maybe as well? But
love-hate.
Yeah.
No, I love a lot of music that was made there. But I also love a lot of British music. But I think most of the music I listen to is American, definitely. And I love like Americana in the broadest sense of the word. I love American cars. I love and I love American people. Like when I'm over there, or whenever I meet American people here, like, oh, they're always so nice and enthusiastic, and you can have like hour-long conversations. Like I was in LA a couple of months ago. I went to a supermarket, and the guy said, "Whoa, you look like somebody from Scarface or something." I was like, "Oh, well, thank you, I guess." And he's like, "What's your favorite movie?" I'm like, "The Big Lebowski." And he's like, "That's my favorite movie too, man." And we had this like, I don't know, like 5-minute conversation with someone in the supermarket about movies. And that's like typical American for me.
Yeah.
And I love that. but I think, you know, the country and its politics are it's such a shame. I feel sorry for people that live there.
Politics. It's time to stop this conversation.
No, we don't have to talk about politics, but it's just like, there's a lot of stuff about America that I love.
Hey, but when is it due, the new album?
It's gonna be out the 7th of December this year.
What year are we living? 2024. For someone who checks this out in 2027.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear it, man. Thank you so much, Pablo van der Poel, for your time and being a guest. And listeners, thanks for listening.
Yes.